morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. Yesterday, a number of you were surprised that I didn't cover the big Justice League story, or at least what turned out to be a big story that originated in the Wall Street Journal. I believe that's the news source where this interview took place and then reverberated across the internet. It was the Wall Street Journal talking to some Warner Brothers executives, and they confirmed that Justice League is being made and that Zack Snyder will be directing it, and the release date, I believe, is 2018. I don't know if that's official, but that's the one that's been floating around. So this story broke late Sunday. Now, there are two reasons I didn't cover it on Monday. The first is circumstance and the schedule behind the scenes here at Beyond the Trailer. In order to keep things running somewhat smoothly, to make sure episodes get out on time, all green screen footage is shot Monday morning. So therefore, Morning Movie News on Monday is the one episode during the week that isn't actually shot that morning. It's shot Sunday or Saturday, depending on my schedule and when I have enough stories to make an episode. So when the Justice League story did break on late Sunday, I already had an episode in the can. So that's one aspect to why it wasn't covered, because it would involve refilming the episode. Now, of course, if a really big story breaks, I will refilm an episode. So that's the second reason, and that's my decision that this wasn't a big story. And I'm still not quite sure if it's a big story. I was surprised at how it kind of, picked up steam in I guess the first, I guess you could say 12 to 16, 18 hours. I don't even know if 24 hours this was a big story, but it was a pretty big story for, I guess the Monday morning. And maybe that's why Warner Brothers, maybe they timed that interview and the Wall Street Journal working together, timed this news to kind of be the big story on Monday morning. We've been talking a lot about how there aren't a lot of big news stories, and so I guess Warner Brothers wanted to, capture that moment again, and also to keep themselves in the headlines, which will actually get to the viewer question, which is actually going to go kind of first today, because it speaks to the first two stories of the day. So you see Warner Brothers trying to keep themselves in the news. So I didn't cover it because I felt it wasn't a big deal. We already knew these issues. I mean, I think that even though Zack Snyder had been confirmed, we all kind of suspected it. But the other reason I didn't think it was a big story is that I had been convinced that the Cyborg casting news on Friday, I believe that story broke on Friday, Thursday or Friday, was a big deal. And I covered it in Morning Movie News, and I have to say, nobody really actually cared that much about it. It was not a big story. It didn't generate a huge number of views and interest. So I felt, well, why keep hitting a dead horse, so to speak? Sorry, DC Cinematic Universe, you might be a dead horse. We'll find out. So I decided, why just, continue on that path when, nobody seems that interested. And I'm not still quite sure if people are incredibly interested. When things trend on Twitter, for instance, I was surprised and a little bit upset with myself on Monday morning when I saw Justice League trending for at least about 2 or 3 hours in the morning. I was like, damn, it was a big story. But, you never know if it's trending because people are talking about it, as in the public, or if news outlets are covering the story. Again, as I said, not a lot to cover out there. So you might see a lot of coverage and everyone tweeting their links to their story, and maybe that's why things sometimes trend. You never quite know what gets something up there. Also, you might want to check your settings. Sometimes on Twitter, you have your account set to only show you what's trending with the people you follow in your maybe even your region. You have to set it to I think statewide or worldwide. I forget what the exact setting is, but you might want to go and check that because it'll give you a false idea of what people are talking about. I learned that the hard way. Luckily, someone pointed that out to me because I was like, well, that's so weird. This is trending. Who would think everybody would be some weird obscure topic that just people that I knew about were friends with were interested in. And so I was like, why is this trending? And someone said, oh, well, I think you probably have it set to only, your group. So I was like, oh, better check that out. All right, which actually a lot of you are my Twitter friends. So I guess it's just stuff that we were interested in. So that is good, but I like to know I like to know what the general big trend is so that we can discuss it and be informed. So anyway, I decided not to cover this story. And I'm still deciding if it is a big story. So let's start off with the viewer question, which I think speaks to what's going on here. It's from Blendy Pajazidi. Sorry, Blendy. I apologize. I really mangled your name there. So Blendy says, hi, Grace. I'm a huge fan of yours. I'm from Kosovo, in a small country in Europe. Awesome! I love the internet for exactly this reason, that Blendy and I can have a discussion about the DC Cinematic Universe, me in New York City, Blendy in Kosovo. So Blendy in Kosovo says, I spend hours every day watching your videos. That's so nice of you. First of all, I'm sorry if I make any grammatical mistakes because English isn't my first language. Great question, Blendy. I totally understood it, and as you can see, I picked it. All right, so Blendy continues saying, my question is, Why do you think DC comic movies aren't getting that much attention while the Marvel movies are the biggest blockbusters right now? In my opinion, The Dark Knight is the best comic book movie of the 2000s and 2010 decades. Why do you think Warner Brothers and DC Comics don't continue to make movies like the Dark Knight trilogy, while Marvel Studios makes 3 to 4 movies a year? Do you think they're lazy? And do you agree with me that a Justice League movie would make more money than the Avengers? I think that because the Justice League members are more famous, like The Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, etc. Fascinating question, Blendy, and I think that you really speak to a lot of the frustration of many a DC fan. I am frustrated with DC across everything right now. Their live action films, their animated films, their comics. It's almost like a Twilight Zone episode where everything you love has been decimated and you don't even recognize it. So I think it's a tough time, in my opinion, to be a DC fan, especially when you consider how far we've fallen. I agree with you. The Dark Knight is the best comic book movie, I think not only of the 2000s and 2010s, but of all time. It's a fantastic film. It's up there with The Godfather. It's perfect. It changed the game when it comes to comic book movies. It made it okay for top-notch talent to make a comic book movie because Christopher Nolan demonstrated that you can make something that would be taken seriously as art as well as comic book fare. So I think that had tremendous ramifications for the comic book movie. So I agree. I think The Dark Knight was phenomenal. Interestingly, I don't think Christopher Nolan himself was even able to repeat it. I think The Dark Knight Rises had a lot of problems. There are a lot of behind-the-scenes issues there. I think he tried to shoehorn too much into too little time. He didn't want to continue with this, so I think he got out all of his ideas in one last final, going out of business sale, I guess. Which is unfortunate, but I think Christopher Nolan was a great talent. But he decided, you know what? Unlike some other people like Bryan Singer or Joss Whedon, and maybe Christopher Nolan will go out there, not find as much success, and change his mind and want to come back. But for the time being, Christopher Nolan has decided he doesn't want to make Batman movies for the rest of his life. So he's moved on, and as a result, Warner Brothers has had to move on, and they've decided to go with Zack Snyder. Now we have debated how smart a choice that is, considering Zack Snyder's very spotty track record for Warner Brothers themselves, and that, he's never really, he's been having diminishing returns ever since his big debut with, official debut. Dawn of the Dead, his remake was very well received, but I mean his big 300 debut on the world global film stage, I guess you could say. But he's had diminishing returns ever since, and he's a lightning rod kind of talent. Now, with The Man of Steel, it did okay. It actually did a better than okay. But I mean, when you're talking in relation to all the other big movies out there, it only did okay. I mean, Captain America is going to pass it very soon. Captain America: The Winter Soldier, and Superman coming off of the Dark Knight trilogy, that really shouldn't be the case. So I think that I don't think that Zack Snyder has proven. I mean, he and David Goyer have proven they have some interesting ideas, but I don't think they've proven yet that they are the right men for the job. The DC is right to put all their eggs in the Snyder-Goyer basket. Now, I'll get to that in a moment. Why that's not only a bad idea from a creative sense, but a creative standpoint, but a business standpoint. But anyway, I think that the Warner Brothers couldn't build like the way Marvel has been building, Blendy, and that's kind of what you're seeing going on here. Them trying to catch up to Marvel while at the same time restart and regroup, because they can't continue with the Nolan universe. They have to create a whole new Batman. Now, will a Justice League movie make more money than an Avengers movie? I feel not necessarily. I feel it'll probably be a point of interest. I do still feel that Batman versus Superman, or apparently they're calling it Superman versus Batman. I guess that, Superman's agent was like, this is his sequel, you took it away from him, you have to at least put his name first. So they're like, okay, so it's Superman versus Batman. I don't think that sounds as good, actually, I have to tell you. But Superman versus Batman, I think that will do better than Captain America 3. But a Justice League movie is going to the success of a Justice League movie is going to rely tremendously on the quality of that Superman versus Batman film. I think while there's a curiosity factor going into this second Warner Brothers DC film, it's not going to, curiosity won't work forever. The quality's going to have to join the recipe at some point, because moviegoers don't want to throw their money away. So, and I don't know if Superman versus Batman will be a good film. The reason I think the Avengers did so well is because it was building off of Iron Man, Thor, which was pretty well received, Captain America, the least well received at that point. It's funny how it's now, I think, right up there with Iron Man is a popular commodity, showing that you can turn things around, you can change things up. But one of the reasons that Marvel can change things up is that they change talent. And so that's the point I really want to get to. And I guess the big aspect of this story with the Wall Street Journal announcement was that Zack Snyder would be directing the Justice League film. And some people expressed disappointment. I saw some commenters saying, oh, darn it, I had thought it would be Ben Affleck for sure. I didn't think it would be Ben Affleck. I think that Ben Affleck probably wants to go and do other things. I think Ben Affleck is very interested in building a diverse career. And I don't think he, like Christopher Nolan, wants to go all in on the superhero genre. I think just playing Batman is probably enough for him. And, having some influence behind the scenes, of course, bringing in his Argo screenwriter on Superman versus Batman. But I do think it's a mistake to sign Zack Snyder. The reason is that that's because they're keeping the same talent, these movies are coming out too far apart. The reason, Blendy, that Marvel can release 3 to 4 films a year is that Joss Whedon just oversees everything and really only focuses on making Avengers movies. And instead they have other talent that's all at work at the same time, kind of like Santa's workshop, churning out. Marvel is not against the idea of having a movie factory to some degree. While DC is like, you know what, Snyder, you make them all, you take your time, you think about it, we'll just have 2 years between every movie. It's fine. Forget about the fact that we're having trouble making headlines these days after a very good start, a very solid start over at Comic-Con when they were giving Marvel a run for their money, where Marvel introduced Age of Ultron and Batman. The Warner Brothers company was able to really steal the spotlight with their announcement that it would be a Superman versus Batman film, that very soon afterwards that Ben Affleck would be playing Batman. That was like the summer of DC headlines. It was phenomenal. It was amazing. You started to think that Kevin Tsujihara knew what he was doing, that he was going to, who needs Legendary? They know what they're doing over at Warner Brothers. This would be an exciting new dawn. And then they delayed the film, and I think that really took a lot of the wind out of their sails. I think they should be bringing in different talent, not only to see what works. Look at what happened when they replaced the behind-the-scenes talent on the Captain America series. Huge, phenomenal change. The Russo brothers are a great find. And look where they came from. I talked about that in my open for that review. You have, Welcome to Collinwood and Yumi and Dupree. And they direct what's going to be one of the most beloved and well-received superhero movies of all time. It's phenomenal to watch. And then it also is to some degree a game changer with the political thriller aspect to it. Yesterday I was writing Movie Math, I was looking at the charts on Box Office Mojo, and I saw that under the political thriller category, Captain America: The Winter Soldier was #1. How fascinating is that it could dominate the list in another genre? So I think that Warner Brothers is making a mistake from a business standpoint, just making Zack Snyder kind of just create his art at his own leisure. I think that they need to have multiple talents working at multiple times, not only to get these movies out faster, but to see what works, to have a great surprise, to find new talent, and then to sign them up for multiple movies and really nail them down and make sure they become Warner Brothers talent. It just seems easy to me. So anyway, and then that other thing that you're speaking about, how, why is nobody talking about DC movies, Blendy? I think that's totally why this story came out. I think DC is just trying very hard, and Warner Brothers, obviously they're the studio behind this, to make sure that you keep thinking about their movies, even though they don't come out until 2016. Another commenter pointed out somewhere online, I saw when I was looking at this story, there'll be 2 Avengers movies before there's even 1 Justice League movie. And that is just ridiculous. Look, Chris Evans was promoting Captain America at the same time that he was getting ready to shoot the Avengers Age of Ultron. It's just the turnover at Marvel is really phenomenal, and I don't know what Warner Brothers is thinking. And they copy Marvel in so many ways. Why they wouldn't copy their assembly line or their business strategy as well is beyond me. So we'll see. I'm not sold on Zack Snyder in any way at all, even. But I'm definitely not sold on the idea of just handing him the keys to every DC movie, where instead maybe he should just be making the Superman films and bring in someone else to handle the Justice League film, etc. If there's a Wonder Woman movie, will they have to wait for an opening on Snyder's schedule? It just makes no sense to me. All right, so that's the first story of the day, what I think of the Justice League, and talking to Blundy's question there. All right, so the second story is actually what else was covered in that article about the DC movies that are coming out. And they talked that they have other properties that they're actively working on. They were confident enough to officially announce them. One is Shazam. I think that is a crazy choice. Jason Momoa, it was rumored, was cast in Justice League or Superman versus Batman. And a lot of people said maybe he'd do Aquaman, etc. I wouldn't be surprised if Jason Momoa was Shazam. Because they'll be able to offset him with a little boy playing the character, because Jason Momoa, with all due respect to him, and I know he was on Game of Thrones, but he's not a great actor. So if you can cut down his screen time and just kind of use him as almost like a humorous visual joke, to the being what a little boy turns into, that could be quite effective. So I wouldn't be surprised. And also, of course, in the New 52, Shazam is a member of the Justice League and was a backup issue, a backup story that ran in those issues at the beginning of the launch. So they're very close ties with DC as far as DC is concerned with Shazam and Justice League. So that might be another spin-off movie. Shazam would get a spin-off movie before Wonder Woman. They are talking about a Wonder Woman movie as well, but I think it's really funny to see who the studios picked to kind of break out. I don't know how much faith I have in Shazam, although I did like that Jeff Johns, Gary Frank storyline, which they really butchered, and because they shortchanged it in the Justice League War animated version of that. If you go and you watch this, if you read the standalone comic that ran in the back of the pages of Justice League, it's actually pretty good. So Shazam, that's one. The Metal Men, you also recently looked at the comics. If there's one reason to read comics right there. I mean, I think this is a little bit of a problem for comics, that they're almost just, as I said many times now, promotional materials for the film, and not stories in their own right. And you're seeing, the comic books pushing characters that obviously the suits are discussing. So Metal Men, they just made a big splash, I guess at least Mercury did, over in the pages of Justice League with Cyborg. I've talked even with the Cyborg casting about how I kind of liked that team up. Maybe you'll see Cyborg show up in that movie. So that could be another extension of this DC cinematic universe. But then there are two Vertigo titles, and this is what really interests me. I guess because, I think these really interest me because they haven't been messed up yet. I think that, I don't think that the DC cinematic universe is starting clean. I think there are a lot, it's not a bedrock foundation, even with Man of Steel. I think there are cracks, so I'm nervous about that. But 100 Bullets, I never read 100 Bullets. I never got into it, but it's a very popular comic book, cult following, one of the great Vertigo titles. Vertigo, by the way, doesn't really put out a lot of comics these days. Karen Berger was the head of that. She left, actually. She ended up leaving DC. Rumor is she's going to start her own indie comics imprint to kind of compete with Image, which is really dominating the market right now. But Vertigo the titles really haven't been the same caliber quality as they once were. But 100 Bullets came out of that run, but also Fables. They mentioned Fables in that article. I am a huge fan of Fables. David Heyman, the Harry Potter producer, he's spearheading this project for Warner Brothers. I'm very excited about it. I have some concern when I think about it because of the fact that I think the Harry Potter movies just skimmed the books, and of course it was a situation where you had to have read the books to really get the most out of the movies. I still enjoyed the movies, but they seemed to skip important things, and every time we would discuss it, people would be like, well, you would know what was happening there if you read the books. And then I chime in with my usual saying, movies shouldn't require homework. But anyway, I have some concern that when you see the Fables movies, I'll be sitting there going, well, if you've read the comic, you would totally know what was happening there. You really should read Fables. It's a phenomenal comic. It's been going on for quite a long time. It's actually coming to an end soon. Bill Willingham, who created it and has written every single issue, including some of its spin-off titles like Jack of Fables, very, very good series as well. There's a Ferris series right now that focuses on the female characters. That hasn't been quite as strong as Fables and Jack of Fables, but really one of the best comic book series of all time. And if they can take their time and do it right, you're looking at something that could produce as many movies as the Harry Potter franchise did. It could be really great. And look at the success of fairy tale movies right now, Maleficent, also on television with Once Upon a Time, which I feel I had to turn off the first episode because I was like, this is such a ripoff of Fables. I can't take it. I have to be loyal to Fables. So it'll be interesting to see if Fables, maybe at the end of the day, a lot of people felt bad for it that Once Upon a Time kind of beat it to the mainstream, but maybe at the end of the day, Fables will be the superior product anyway. Although no offense to you Once Upon a Time fans, I know there are quite a number of you, and you are legion, both in terms of your numbers and your love for the television show. But I'm very excited about a Fables movie, and I'm glad they're pushing that forward. And it has to be a movie because Fables is a very big budget story. If they do it right, it would be like fairy tale, Lord of the Rings style aspects. We see some of that in Maleficent, actually, but I'm talking about Peter Jackson's attention to detail and storytelling. I wish that Peter Jackson actually would make the Fables movies. And maybe if he's done, he does have a good relationship with Warner Brothers. I just thought of that. You just saw that idea come to fruition. Peter Jackson directing Fables would be one of the greatest things ever of all time. And I would be so happy, and it would be such a great thing for him to do. Someone should, if I were David Heyman, I'd be like, so sneak into his room or his trailer and leave the comic book on his desk. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The other films that DC is planning. And we'll see if they can get those right. All right, so on to the third story of the day. Remember, the viewer question was answered at the beginning, so this is what we're going to wrap up with. And that is, I actually had intended to make this an all DC-focused episode today. But then yesterday, a rumor came out about Star Wars casting that was so phenomenal and so piqued my interest that I thought we had to discuss it today. So basically, the rumor is that Star Wars casting will probably be announced on Star Wars Day, and the big Star Wars weekends you're seeing going on down at Disney World, etc., which are now fully a company integrated event because they now own Lucasfilm, of course. But the rumor is that the Star Wars casting will be announced on Sunday. So we're finally going to find out who's in the film. It's already been cast, and they're just I can't believe they've kept it under wraps. But the rumors are really going rampant, according to the industry trades. Now, of course, Adam Driver's name is still in the mix. John Boyega, his name is there as well. I'm very excited about that. Of course, I think a lot of us expected that because Ray Fisher signed up for Cyborg, so that means he was out of the running. He was available. DC went and picked him up, DC Warner Brothers. So we have Adam Driver and John Boyega. But then a third male name was mentioned, which I thought was fascinating and spoke to so many different things. But let me tell you who it is first. Oscar Isaac from Inside Llewyn Davis. I thought that was a fascinating choice. Now, of course, as some of you might be aware, I know that his fan base is that he is a Guatemalan actor. He's a Latino actor. I actually just recently recommended him for Sinister Six casting for a potential South American version of Kraven. So he has a lot of fans because he is a Latino star. So we speak a lot about diversity here. At least I speak a lot about diversity. Some of you appreciate it, some of you don't like it. But I think that you can see the reason I discuss it is because it is an issue in Hollywood, not just with their global aspects about how you have new audiences. Of course, that is really what's always drives diversity, that there's money to be made there, especially, at least in Hollywood, that's what drives diversity. But you can see that this really is a factor to Hollywood, and they recognize the emergence of these new demographics. We talked about the female demographic yesterday. We often talk about the strength of the Latino demographic with Fast and Furious. And of course, we have the Asian demographic we talk about with the huge box office over there. Now, unfortunately, no Asian stars are set so far for Star Wars, but you're seeing a situation where you have a white lead, a black lead, and a Latino lead. That's fascinating to see that kind of diversity in a movie like Star Wars. To be so on point about it. I mean, of course, Star Trek, JJ Abrams' Star Trek is diverse, but they weren't all large roles. I mean, Sulu, of course, small role. I think that the diversity was secondary. And of course, it played off the diversity that existed in Star Trek to begin with. But to see this kind of like a trio of actors. It's almost like when they say with women, the old thing of we need a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead. To see that kind of diversity so apparent here and so in the forefront, it'll be fascinating to see if it works. Because if I were the suits at Disney, I'd be like, oh, good job, JJ. I like the fact that you've not only picked diverse actors, but let's get to the second point, good actors. These are very good actors. They're very strong, and I think that they have great personality. I think that that's one of the things that really speaks to me here. They won't be overwhelmed by the special effects. You have very intense actors, all three of them here. And I'm big fans of all of them, and I really love to see this come to fruition. Now, to some degree, there is a woman apparently in the mix, Maisie Williams something. I think she's going to get the role over Lupita Nyong'o. I think the rumor is she's going to be a Sith apprentice, perhaps to Adam Driver's character. That's kind of the rumor that's shaping up. But I think that that's going to be a secondary role. But I think that getting this kind of diversity is great. I know a lot of people were hoping for a female lead. Maybe we'll get that in the second film. But, this can't start to look like a Benetton ad or a newscast when they get the right kind of, demographic setup. I think that this is a good step in the right direction, and I think it's a good place to start. So anyway, I think it's a very interesting casting choice. And the only thing that gives me pause, the only thing that makes me not 100% excited about this is how JJ Abrams really handicapped, and to some degree you could say ruined, Benedict Cumberbatch's movie career. He cast him, of course, as Khan. That was a role that he whitewashed. Maybe he's going for diversity, repentance here with Star Wars Episode 7, but a lot of people are upset that, he didn't cast an Indian or East Asian actor in that role because that's what Khan is supposed to be. So people were upset about that, but he cast Benedict Cumberbatch, and of course Benedict Cumberbatch was coming off of a huge fan base with Sherlock Holmes, etc. And then he comes out here in a film that not a lot of people loved. It was supposed to be a surprise who he was, but of course everybody guessed it. Entertainment Weekly accidentally leaked it officially right before the movie came out. And then, of course, the Fifth Estate didn't do Cumberbatch any favors either. But, you looked at someone Cumberbatch who was poised to really make it big as he transitioned from the small to the big screen, and JJ Abrams kind of ruined that for him. So it's unfortunate because to most American audiences, that's how they met Benedict Cumberbatch as Khan. And I think a lot of them walked away unimpressed, as we've discussed before, saying, that's what everybody's making such a big deal about? Take him or leave him. And as you can see with Fifth Estate, a lot of people decided to leave him. So we'll see if Benedict Cumberbatch is ever able to rebound in terms of his film career, but J.J. Abrams had something great there, equally as good as Oscar Isaac from Inside Llewyn Davis, John Boyega from Attack the Block, and Adam Driver from Girls. Cumberbatch was that potent, he was that amazing, and it just fizzled. So I would hate to see all three of these individuals, these three actors, thrown under the bus as well. Now, of course, the Star Wars property is in involved here. Kathleen Kennedy is heavily involved, Steven Spielberg's longtime producer. Disney, you can be sure, is checking in on that office every day, so hopefully you have things going a little bit better. So Ed, it'll be interesting, a lot of diversity here. So again, you have a white actor, a black actor, a Latino actor, and I'm sure a robot thrown in there. You've got every demographic covered. And, of course, when we talk about gender, I guess that'll be something that we can discuss. We can see another day. But we might get our first great female villain. Although the animated series have a lot of great, this animated Star Wars series have some good female villains there. At least one I remember seeing in the Clone Wars ads. I stopped watching that eventually. But we'll see. What do you think of the casting for Star Wars? Are you excited about that? Do you like the diversity? Or are those of you who don't like me talking about diversity, do you not like it in your Star Wars movie? Do you think it is too obvious? What do you think of that lineup, just the lineup itself? Are you excited to see a Latino actor cast in a Star Wars movie? Does that seem like progress to you? Or do you think, oh, we've already made this progress, what are you talking about, Grace? So write your thoughts down below about that. Also about the DC Universe, how that's shaping up, Zack Snyder being signed on, and it's so far away, etc. And also what you think of the other DC properties that are being developed officially at Warner Brothers. Write your thoughts down below. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. A lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff to think about. And so I'm looking forward to reading your comments and talking to you further down below. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.